Alright, should be good now.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. This is a shiur in a preparation for Purim that we're going to celebrate it next week. And tonight we are going to discuss the untold story of Purim. Giving is winning. This is something very interesting that is underneath the surface. And there's actually many questions about Megillat Esther. You could say that the whole Megillah is filled with questions and secrets, and it could only be studied underneath the surface, because that even Hashem's name is concealed. It is not even mentioned once in the Megillah. It only says Hamelech. And which king are we talking about? Are we talking about Achashverosh, or are we talking about with all the seemingly coincidental events, they come from Hashem? So, one of the most difficult questions in the Megillah is the following question. So, Esther manages miraculously to reach the king's inner courtyard. Now, reaching Achashverosh's inner courtyard was a very dangerous move, because whoever entered it was killed instantly. And why was that so? Because Achashverosh was scared of assassination. Because by the Bigtan Teres, they tried to assassinate him, so he was very scared. However, she manages miraculously to enter it. This is after she discovered the decree against the Jews. And Achashverosh greets her. And he says, what does he say to her? You could see in the source 1, what is your petition? Even if it be until half a kingdom, it shall be granted to you. So, how would you expect Esther to react to this generous offer? Half a kingdom. If you would be Esther in the circumstances that you knew that there was a decree, an evil decree hanging above the heads of your people, and if you don't act quickly, the whole nation of Israel is going to be destroyed, chas v'chalila. How would you react? What would you say?
Well, I mean, at this point, as far as I understand the story, is that Achashverosh does not know that Esther does know.
Mm-hmm.
So if she would now say, Haman tries to kill my people, put them into jail or whatever, kill them, it would be a lot of questions, like, hey, how do you know this? Like, well, it's just the accusation, or it's tough. I don't know. What to ask the king? It's a good question.
So that's a very good point that you were saying, David, that the knowledge about about it all, about the decree, was kept a secret. So how did she discover about it? So, but it's a good point. However, on the other side, Achashverosh offers her half of a kingdom. Now, we would have expected that now is the opportunity that she's waiting for. He seems in a mindset that he would grant her whatever she wanted. Now, we have to remember that we can study the Megillah when we know the end. And like we don't know that she's going to have another opportunity, right? And instead of asking to save her nation, what does she ask for? A banquet, right? Look at source 2. Esther said, if it please the king, let the king and Haman come today to the banquet that I have prepared for him. Now, as I said at the time, Esther did not know the end of the story. We cannot read the Megillah with a gragger in a hand that we know the end, okay? Now, this is a very important understanding in learning a Tanakh. In learning a Tanakh, we have a disadvantage that we know the end of the story. My 6-year-old daughter, when I tell her the Parshat Shavua, so she's she's excited about it. She wants to know what is going to happen next, and she tells me, "Abba, don't stop. You tell me what is going to happen." So this is a great advantage that she has, but she doesn't know the end of the story. But we know the end of the story, and sometimes by knowing what is going to happen, so we miss the very important facts, very important information. So, for example, over here, this is a question that sometimes just he slips through our fingers unnoticed. So, she could not have known that there would be a better opportunity to cancel the decree against the Jews. So, the question is, why did she let the opportunity slip between her fingers and not save the Jewish people? So this is the question. What do you think? How would you answer this?
Doesn't the Gemara say that she did this so that she could go create a banquet in which it would be like, she can't necessarily ask the king, and what she could do is make some glances at Haman, and the king thinks that they're cheating and kill them both. Mm-hmm. That's what the Gemara says, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, this is a possibility. However, she is taking a risk because she doesn't know that she's going to have a second chance. She doesn't know that the king is going to be in such a good mood as he is presently, and he's going to give her half of the kingdom again. You're taking a very big chance. So, how could you explain this?
Well, so I guess, like, if she said yes to the king's offer to have a kingdom, it won't really help the Jewish people at all, right? It won't solve her problem. So, like it's a great offer, but like for her, it doesn't really do anything because it won't change her problem. Right?
Okay, so that is a very good possibility. So, who else wants to give an explanation about why is still let this opportunity slip between her fingers?
Oh, because she had other mission in mind. She didn't want power.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted to save her people in the end. So the kingdom here or there, it doesn't really change for her something.
Mm-hmm.
For what she's looking for.
Yeah. Well, giving half of the kingdom, Ahasuerus actually ruled the Persian Empire that was most of the known world at that time, and by asking for the Jewish people to save the Jewish people, it is much less than a fraction of a half kingdom.
Yeah, but if I want to plane, it doesn't matter how many cars you will give to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a good point. Yeah. So let's see what the Gemara says. The Gemara says here's something very interesting. First of all, the Gemara asks the question, because it's a very disturbing question. You could see in the tractate of Megillah, source 3. Why did Esther invite Haman to the banquet? This is a slightly different question. It is about why did she invite him at all? And the Gemara says something very interesting. There are many different answers. However, we are going to focus on the answer of Rabbi Yehoshua. So, what does he say? Does anyone want to read source 4?
Okay. Rabbi Yeshua said, she, Esther, learned this from the legacy of her father, as it stated, if your foe is hungry, feed him bread, and if he's thirsty, give him water to drink. Okay, thanks. So this is very strange, that she had some kind of ancient tradition that if your foe is hungry, feed him bread. So invite Haman to the banquet. But this is very strange. So what does this mean? How does this help anything? By inviting Haman to the banquet? What do you think?
Maybe, I don't know, like the phrase like your friends, like enemy. How's it go? Your friend's friend. Like your enemy, keep close. How's it go? You guys know what I'm talking about?
Wait, what you're missing?
Like you're at.
Keep your enemies close, but keep your friends closer. Or
No. Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer.
Okay.
Yeah. So like, I guess
interesting.
Like, I don't know if there's a saying that like Haman's like obviously like one of the worst enemies of Jewish people ever. But I don't know, the phrase says like to keep your friends close, your enemies closer.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know, something to do with that.
Interesting. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah. Like the saying says, like if somebody's, if we eat on the same table with somebody, we get to know them.
Yeah, but
we see how they behave. We see maybe their weaknesses, behavior. Or
Israel doesn't really talk about
to
manipulate somebody. It talks about chesed.
So we could say Esther wanted to make Haman a friend.
No, you don't want to make Haman a friend. You do this because it's basic compassion. That's what Hashem even gives compassion to the evildoers.
So that's interesting. We are going to talk about that, Shoshana. Thank you. So let's see what the Maharal from Prague says. The Maharal. Has anyone been to Prague? So in Prague, there's an ancient yeshua called the Altneuland. Altneu yeshua. I got mixed up with the name of Herzl's book. It sounds familiar. Right, yeah. Anyway, it is not by chance because of the Maharal. Many of his writings are very Zionistic because he talks about the land of Israel and the Skula of Am Yisrael, like in his book Netzach Yisrael. So it isn't a coincidence. Anyway, he writes something very interesting. He has got a book about Purim, and he wants to read source 5. This is from his book.
It is a
matter of great wisdom, says the Maharal. When Haman received food from Esther, in this way she defeated Haman.
Okay, thanks. So this is a very strange. We have to go deeper and you try and understand why is giving winning. Esther actually gave to Haman bread in the banquet, and this is some a kind of victory over Haman. But we have to try and understand this. It doesn't make sense. So we have to go deeper, and this is something very interesting. It is said in the Midrash. This is something very interesting in the source 6. Rabbi Yehuda, son of Rabbi Shimon, said, if a house is infested by snakes, one should bring a deer's horn and have smoke he come out of it, and the snakes will immediately flee. Similar to this way, when Esther came, Haman fled. Okay, so this is a very interesting way. If a house is infested by snakes, one should take a deer's horn and have a smoke into it. Now, you don't try it in the dormitories upstairs. So, what does this mean? What do snakes and deer have to do with Haman and Esther? It seems like there's no connection between the two. So, does anyone have any idea?
Maybe like a snake is like, snake without what's the guy's name? The first two people in the world, Chava and Adam. So snake was very like deceiving and like trickery. And I guess a deer is more like patient and like quiet and like graceful, like Esther maybe.
Interesting. That is a very good explanation.
Yeah, it fits with the person of the reveal of it.
So it's a good.
Smoking a horn.
So it is a good way of thinking to try and find a symbolism to the meaning of the Midrash, and try and understand what it represents. There's a way how to uncode the Midrash. Now, it is important to understand that the Midrash is actually written in code. Not only this Midrash, most of the Midrashim are written in code. Now, why is this so? Now, one isn't allowed to write the oral Torah because it is supposed to stay oral, and if one writes it down, so it loses its teachings, because some things you cannot confine into writing. If you want to if you want the Torah to sustain a modern world and a changing world, it has to be kept vibrant. It has to be kept alive.
What's the
Bridge?
no?
Connecting.
Not connecting.
Fighting.
Yeah, what's the? Why can't both be at the same time?
Well,
Like after the Mishnah and Talmud were written down.
So if this is actually talking about all of the rabbinic literature, the Mishnah and the Talmud, it wasn't supposed to be written down. And the fact that it was written down, it was only because that Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, who lived in Israel at the time of the Romans, he foresaw that there is very soon, it was going to be a very long and dangerous exile, the galut that we experienced.
You're saying that also like after that. So what you're implying. So even like
after that is different. After that is different. I am here talking about the oral Torah. Now the written Torah, it is the Chamisha Chumshei Torah, the Tanakh is the written Torah, and
no, but what we have here is basically oral Torah.
That's right. And it is true. For example, let's say you take a small example. When one gives a shiur, okay. For example, when I give a shiur, okay. So it is completely different. Writing it down, you're transcribing it, and giving it orally, because that you cannot put the intonation, the tone of a voice. You can't put all the expressions into writing, and there is so much that you could you could explain through speaking and through gestures that you cannot explain through just writing it down. So this is just a small example. It is of course deeper than that, but what was it supposed to be? Originally, that there would be the Torah shebichtav, the written Torah, and there would also be an oral Torah that would be passed on from a father to son, and from a rabbi to his talmid, to his student, from a generation to a generation, and that would be passed on orally. However, when Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi saw that historically the conditions are changing for preserving the oral Torah, and there was a big danger that everything would be forgotten because of the enemies, and because of the nation of Israel would be in exile. So this would be something very, very difficult. So he decided to write down the old Torah, and he composed the Mishnah. And he invited all the sages of his generation and anyone who knew a law which was passed down orally to tell him. And then a couple of generations after that, after the Mishnah, so Ravina and Ravashi, they understood that they have to write down the Talmud. And at the time, there was a very big dilemma about the part of the Torah that isn't halachic, the mystical part of the Torah. And from one hand, they were very concerned that if it would be written down clearly, so everyone could understand these great secrets, even people who aren't worthy are going to understand it. The nations of the world would understand it, and that could be a disaster. But on the other hand, if you do not write these secrets down, they are going to be forgotten. So they decided to do a compromise, and they did write it down, but they wrote it down in code, in order that only those who have got the key to this code would be able to understand it. And one of the ways that they concealed the secrets of the inner part of the Torah was that they wrote in allegories. They also they took ideas and they planted them in different places. So one of the ways to decode the code of a midrash, it is to compare different sources, different sources of the Agadah, of a midrash together, and then one could view a full picture. Okay? So for example, we are going to do an example here. So we read, it says in the midrash, Rabbi Yehuda, son of Rabbi Shimon, said, if a house is infested by snakes, one should bring a deer's horn and have smoke come out of it. The snakes will immediately flee. Similar to this, when Esther came, Haman fled. So this, from a first glance, seems very peculiar, and this was the intention of the Chazal, to write the midrash in a deliberate, peculiar way, with symbols and allegories and strange stories, in order that simple people are going to think that it's just stories and it doesn't make sense. But sages, people who have wisdom and they have a belief in the greatness of the Torah, they understand that it is very deep. So one of the ways to decode it is to find out what does a snake symbolize in the sources of a Chazal. And I brought here a different source, a completely different source. It doesn't have anything to do with this, but it does talk about what the snake symbolizes. Okay? And then afterwards, I have got here sources that talk about what the deer symbolizes. And then when we put everything together, we are going to understand this like a big puzzle. Okay?
Dan had a snake, right?
Right.
And it was the deer, Naphtali, right?
That's right. We're going to get to Naphtali soon. So let's read source 7. Okay, the tractate of the Sotah. Who wants to read this?
I got it. And so too we found with regard to the primeval snake, where he placed his eyes on that which was unfit for him. And that which he desired was not given to him, and that which was in his possession was taken from him. The Holy One, blessed be He, said, I said that the snake will be king over every domesticated animal and non-domesticated animal. But now he is cursed more than all the domesticated animals and all the non-domesticated animals of the field.
Okay, thanks. That's enough. Thanks. So, what do we learn from the character trait of a snake? From what a Chazal say about him in the tractate of the Sotah. What does the snake represent?
Torah.
Well, it could be, but you say from what it says. He was cursed, right? But it says here that he placed his eyes on which was unfit for him. That's right. But what is this a character trait? Meaning that he wanted to. What?
Jealous.
Okay. It is the selfishness and the will to receive and to take what it doesn't belong to oneself. Greed. That's right. To take for oneself alone. This is also a Kabbalistic concept. It is important to understand that there is a Kabbalistic concept of the will to give, of the will to receive for oneself alone. So this was actually the character trait of Haman. And if you could see in the source 8, who wants to read this?
The writer continues, and so we found with regard to Cain, who desired to inherit the whole world alone, and Korach, who desired the priesthood, and Balaam, who desired Balak's money, and Doeg, who was jealous of David, and Achitophel, who was also jealous of David, and Gehazi, who took Naaman's money, and Avshalom, who wanted the kingdom, and Adoniah, who was...
So we skip until Haman.
Haman, who always wanted to kill the Jews. All these were people who placed their eyes on which that was unfit for them, and consequently what they desired was not given to them, but what was taken from them.
Okay, great, thank you. So, the same character trait, according to Chazal, the will to receive for oneself alone, and greed, this appeared also with the snake, and also with Haman. One could say that the snake was the first creature which represented this character trait. Okay? And Haman was also in the list. Now, on the other hand, a deer symbolizes selflessness and the will to give to others. Now, who wants to read a source 9?
Naphtali is a deer let loose who gives beautiful sayings.
Okay, great. So thank you. So the deer gives. This is what it says, that the deer gives. And in source 10, this is extraordinary. In the Midrash of the Tehillim, who wants to read this?
The deer is the kindest animal. Her compassion is great for her fawns. When all the animals are thirsty, they come to her because they know her kind deeds, in order that she will look up to heaven and the Creator will be compassionate on them.
Okay, thanks. And it says in the Zohar that the deer shares her food with all the animals of the forest. So we could see here that the character trait of a deer is actually to give, to share. So we could see from the Midrashim that a deer symbolizes caring for others with selflessness. And we could also see with Esther the character trait of giving, because she sacrificed her life in order to save her people. So if we go back to Chazal, if you go back please to source 6 and tell me if after this journey that we did in the sources, does it seem comprehensible? Rabbi Yehuda, son of Rabbi Shimon, said, if a house is infested by snakes, so what does this mean, infested by snakes? Okay. Greed. If it is the will to receive for oneself alone, okay, one should bring a deer's horn and have smoke come out of it. What does this mean? A deer.
The kindness to give.
Kindness, right? To spread the kindness, okay, because if you would take a smoke from a deer's horn, so it spreads, right? So if it is the will to receive for oneself alone, what should one do? Spread kindness, giving, okay? And then it says that if a snake will immediately flee, what does this mean?
Like it'll stop being greedy?
That's right. If that the atmosphere of receiving for oneself alone is going to disappear. Similar to this way, when Esther came, Haman fled. So we could see that we are starting to decode the midrash. We are starting to understand it through going on a journey in the sources, trying to understand these concepts. So what does a snake mean? What does a deer mean? In Chazal, because but they actually concealed the secrets of the midrash in different sources and in different places, and only when you bring it all together, so you could see it. Actually, this is a secret, but I taught you. It is said in the Yerushalmi. It says that the words of Torah are aniyim. They are poor in one place, but they are wealthy in other places. Meaning that it could be within one source. You don't really understand what is it talking about. But if you look at those key ideas and you look at it in different sources, you understand. Because of the words of Torah, they complete each other. Yeah.
But if we look as the snake is done,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't work that good because the snake is of done is just and wise.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a very good question. What does that mean?
If we connect
Right.
it also with the Naphtali as a deer.
Okay, good question. Good question of what it means about Dan. It is a good question. I have to check about that. Thank you. Yes. Okay, so now I think that we could bring everything together and we could really understand why Esther invited Haman to the banquet. Okay? So, what did Esther give, actually? So it's important to understand that the whole story of the Megillah deals with taking. Ahasuerus takes over the throne of the Persian Empire. He is only seeking pleasures. The people of Israel take part in Ahasuerus' banquet. Haman takes power and honor. Everything evolves around taking for oneself alone. Taking. However, there is one stage in the story that everything changes. That instead of taking, it turns into giving. What is the stage in the story that everything changes?
When she offers the meal, when she invites him to the meal.
Okay, slightly before that, we're going to get to that. Hachashverosh offers Esther to take for herself whatever she wishes into half a kingdom. She could take whatever she wants. But instead of taking, what does she do? What you said?
She gives.
She gives. And then she wants to give. And she invites Achashverosh and Haman to the banquet. And this is in order to save the Jewish people. And from that very moment, the whole atmosphere of the Megillah changes from selfishness to selflessness, from taking to giving. And then all of the events of the Megillah, they also change. When Esther refused to take half of the kingdom, and instead she chose to give a banquet, so she knew that giving is winning. So this is what Rabbi Yehoshua said, and look again in source 11. Rabbi Yehoshua said, she Esther learned from the legacy of her father, as it is stated, if your foe is hungry, feed him bread. And now the words of the Maharal are also clear, because he said that when Haman received food, so true, from Esther, in that way she defeated Haman. So when I gave this Yeshil last year, so one of the students said that also Mordechai gave, and through his action, he actually helped the Jewish people. What did Mordechai give? He gave her. That's right, but there is something that he really did give. What?
The information that he heard.
Right, Natan. He gave Achashverosh his life. So, because he gave him the gift of life, so this also helped in the process. So, Esther and Mordechai, they were focusing on giving. Haman and Achashverosh were focusing on taking. But giving is winning. And actually giving is not only winning, it is the essence of Purim. Now, at the end of the Megillah, so it says, who wants to read source 13?
I do. 9:22 Esther. In the days on which the Jews gained relief from enemies, in the month which had been turned about for them from one of sorrow to gladness, and from mourning to festival, to observe them as days of feasting and gladness, and sending delicacies to one another and gifts to the poor.
Okay, thanks. So, why is there a special mitzvah to give Mishlachei Manot on Purim? We don't really find this in any other holiday, perhaps apart from Pesach, that there's Kimcha de Pischa, that you have to give the poor. But most of the holidays, there isn't something like that in Rosh Hashanah, on Sukkot, or Shavuot. Why on the Purim? On the Hanukkah, so you give Hanukkah gift, but that is, it isn't really, yeah.
So, Haman wanted to remove the statues, so the Shekhinah was away now, and he wanted to keep it that way. So he wanted to remove the panim lepanim between the Am and Hashem. And when we came over this, we were looking panim lepanim. And such we do also to our friends, to the other people that are with us, that we see face to face, and we know it back to back.
Beautiful, beautiful. This is a very deep answer that you gave. Hey, thank you. Yeah. So well, that is very nice. More explanations? Why do we have a special mitzvah to give mishlochei manot on Purim?
Well, because of the whole story of Purim, like for Esther, like she gave so much of herself. She gave like she offered the feast. She also gave like her life many times. She fasted. When the Jews fasted, they gave like 3 days rest. They gave to Hashem basically to fast. So I guess like us now, I guess we kind of like, on Purim, we kind of do it again, like somewhat, and they give to other people, like the Jews gave back then, and Esther gave for the people. Yeah.
React the story of the Purim. Beautiful. Giving is actually the essence of the Purim. And the sages say, "Mishenichnas Adar marbim b'simcha." There's even a beautiful song about that.
Everyone knows the
That's right. From the beginning of Adar, we increase in joy. So the question is, what is true happiness? What is a true happiness? This is the $1 million question, right?
Wow.
What is a true happiness?
Hashem.
Right? And what is Hashem? Hashem created the world in order to give, according to the Ramchal. So the Torah says, what does the Torah say about a happiness? Look in Surah 15. You shall rejoice on your festival, you, your son, your daughter, your servant, your maidservant, the Levite.
Is that yours?
Yeah. And the orphan and the widow who are in your cities. Okay? So, true Jewish joy is when one shares happiness with others, and especially with those who are unfortunate. If the Rambam says, look at the Rambam in Surah 16, when a person eats and drinks during a holiday, he is obligated to feed converts, orphans, widows, and the poor and miserable. However, he who locks the gates of his courtyard and eats and drinks without feeding the poor and the embedded, this is not considered rejoicing of a mitzvah, but rather the rejoicing of oneself. And he says elsewhere, in Surah 17, it is preferable for a person to be more liberal with donations to the poor than to be lavish in his preparations of Purim feast or in sending portions to his friend. For there's no greater and more splendid happiness than to gladden the hearts of the poor, the orphan and the widow. So experiencing true happiness is possible only through the joy of giving. Giving is the true happiness. When one does something good for someone else, either by charity or by a chesed, this is the greatest joy. One feels such a sense of a satisfaction. One feels the joy of giving. And giving is the essence of Purim. As we explained, that Esther chains the course of the story of a Megillah through a giving. So this is why that there is no better mitzvah to symbolize Purim than giving mishlochei manot. Yeah.
Yeah. So also like the matanot yuvenim on Purim, we don't do it like tzedakah, that we have this whole cheshbon that's going on to our hands, but what we give to whoever pulls his hand out.
That's right.
Yeah, and it's like an image, like in how in Shemaim, if we seek help from Hashem, that He gives us.
Beautiful. A beautiful idea. This is a yeshub, because sometimes where you see somebody who is asking for a charity, and then we say to ourselves, oh, he looks young, why isn't he working, and why should I give him? But on the Purim, as you said, Shoshan, that one really has to remove all the calculations, and one really has to just give he freely, and as you said, that if we give without any calculations, also Hashem is going to give to us without any calculations. So a beautiful idea that you shared with us. Thank you. So a happy Purim, everyone. And B'ezrat Hashem, and may we meet on happy occasions.
Amen.